Hi, and welcome to the telecast, the writing community publishing question answer session. So I'm Laura Ann Dominic. My book is Oil and Water, and I am self-published. I'm going to let some of the other panelists here talk about what they're going to be discussing. So I'm going to be discussing the ins and outs of self-publishing as told from my perspective. So let's go ahead and let J.L. Rothstein go ahead and introduce, please.
Hi, this is J.L. Rothstein. I'm author of the new book Atonement, which is book 1 in the Heaven Sent trilogy. I am self-published, and I am going to talk to you today about when you know it's time to stop querying and self-publish.
All right, let's go ahead and let's hear from Jess. Oh, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry.
That's
Hi,
okay.
Jess Hardy, the author of the novella The Bench that's out from Evernight Publishing. And I have another book coming out in February called Missing Charlie from Black Rose Writing. And I'm still trying to get an agent and traditionally published as well.
And Britt.
Oh, perfect.
Your turn.
Yay! Okay, it's really nice to meet all of you today. I'm super excited for this, and hopefully, like Laura said, we can be helpful. I'm probably the newest member, Britt Weisrock. I was picked up by a publisher my first try at PitMad, so I would be happy to help discuss kind of how important it is to really formulate your pitch, because you have so many characters to do it. And you have to grab them within that tweet, and how important that is. My first book, I'm the author of Triad, a paranormal romance, a little steamy, a little fun, a little Twilighty, a little true bloody, which is coming. My tentative release date is spring, like April-ish of next year. So hopefully you'll be looking for me. It's supposed to be a trilogy, but we shall see about that. But yeah, I can't wait to interact with you, and hopefully we can be helpful.
Yes. All right, let's go ahead and have C. D'Angelo talk next.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here too. I am with an independent press as well, but I did get my contract through PitMad. I began my querying and ended my querying with PitMad. So I like to help other people now with their pitches, and I have an ebook and evaluation services, coaching services, and I just love to help people, get those contracts through that way.
Awesome. And then finally, we have E. Russo. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, all. I'm so happy to be here today. My name is Elizabeth. I specialize in copy editing and critique services. And I especially love being able to help new writers navigate their way through the process, giving them an extra look, trying to help them make the good first impression. I'm also a writer myself, so I do understand the pain that you're going through, and that's why I'm here to help.
All right, awesome. So without any further ado, we're going to jump right in with the self-publishing aspect. So my first novel, I did not do any kind of, hold on one second. I'm just making sure that we have the right view up for the recording. Here we go. Okay, so I did not do any kind of querying before I decided to self-publish my book. And part of the reason for that I didn't even try was that I wanted full creative control, but also because there was a lot of misinformation out there about what querying is really like, which is why I wanted to put this together so that everyone could have an idea as to what it's like to self-publish a book. Because honestly, I am so happy that I did it now, because I learned so much about the industry, about what it's like to actually self-publish, what goes into publishing a book. But I wanted to make sure that people know that it is not like it is an easy road of any kind. It is a labor of love and requires a lot of heavy legwork, financial outlay, and all of that. So, like I said, I really wanted full creative control. This is my first book. It was like a baby to me, and I really wanted to make sure that no one else had a say in kind of what happened with my book. And so I went and I started digging, and there was a lot of, like I said, there was misinformation. I was told that you will not hear anything from any kind of publisher or agent for 18 months if you try to query. Like that was And the thing is, part of the reason for that is that there are a lot of printing companies out there that put out this misinformation to get you to print with them. Again, part of why I wanted to have this, because that's not necessarily true. I published through 2 separate printers. So I went through Amazon, which I have my ebook exclusively through Kindle. And part of the reason for that is, as a self-publisher, you can choose to enroll in KDP Select for your ebook, which gets you a higher royalty rate, which is really nice. You're forced into Kindle Unlimited, which honestly is fine because you get paid for pages read. And you do have to allow the Kindle lending library for people to lend it to family members. But I haven't particularly had any bad experiences with that in any regard. But I also went through Ingram Spark, which is the self-publishing arm of Ingram, who is one of the biggest book systems out there. So if you have an Ingram number, if you have an Ingram book, you will be seen in Barnes and Noble. You'll be seen in Waterstones if you're over in Britain. You'll be seen in Books A Million if you're down here in the South. You'll be seen in Target and Walmart. You might not be seen on the shelves. That's a different story, and I'm going to get to that. But so I went with the 2 of them. So the other nice thing about Ingram is that you can get hardcovers printed. So I have right here with me, here's a proof of my paperback, which is through Amazon. So you get those. And then I have hardcovers, which went through Ingram. You cannot get a hardcover made through Amazon. So the hardcover thing was a little bit of a vanity thing for me because it was my first book and I wanted a hardcover. But it's also nice because there are some people who they really want a hardcover. I had several friends who wanted it, and I've actually sold enough of them that I'm not mad that I did it. Cover art. So you're going to need to pay a cover artist unless you know someone who can do it. You need to have your cover art made. So I'm talking about the financial outlay here. That's one thing you're really going to have to work on. Formatting. If you are going to self-publish, you need to have like the PDF ready to go because it's going to need to go in your book. And formatting that, I mean, I could probably do it in my sleep now after doing it so many times. But it took me probably 2 weeks to figure out what the correct formatting method was. Editing, and I'm going to not go too deep into this because I'm sure that Elizabeth will want to get into this more with her segment, but you definitely want to have everything edited, at least looked over by an editor to make sure that it's clean, because even though you're self-published, there's still a level of professionalism that they want to see in the writing and things like that. And not that people aren't good at their own editing, because there are a lot of people who are great at their own editing, but it never hurts to have a second set of eyes. I'm so glad that I've had a second set of eyes on my manuscript. The final thing is really marketing, which is, it's almost a full-time job sometimes, but it depends on what your goals are. It really depends on what your goals are as an author, as a writer. You know, like my goal is to eventually have all of my books out there, and I want to continue and I want to make writing a career. So for me, I'm going to spend right now treating it like a full-time job. Going back to the Ingram and Amazon thing, and I'm kind of flying through this, so if you have any questions, please put it in the chat because I want to make sure that I get to it. So you need an ISBN number for your books. You want to go through Bowker for that. There are other programs that you can use to buy your ISBNs, but having gone through one and having to get a refund because it turns out that you have to publish through them. It's fine print. You have to publish through them in order to use the ISBNs you bought from them. Just go through Bowker. You can buy a batch of them if you're planning on publishing more than one book. So I bought 10 ISBN numbers for the price of like 2. And you can, thank you, Emma, for the question. I will absolutely get to that. So for Ingram, like I said, they go to all the other stores. You can just go through Ingram and Ingram will go through Amazon. What is nice about doing both, at least for the paperbacks, is that Amazon, you make more royalty for each of the books. So if you have the same cover art, if you have the same PDF file that you can use for both, you're basically printing the same exact book because you'll also use the same ISBN number. but you're going to make more on any paperbacks that Amazon sells than you would on making paperbacks that someone sells at, say, Barnes and Noble. If you want it to be on the shelves of a bookstore, there is no guarantee that that can happen even through Ingram. You can have it happen. The way that that would work is that because you have an Ingram number, it can be ordered to the stores. So especially if you're like a local author, a lot of bookstores like that, they would want to have like a copy or two on the shelf with your autograph in there maybe. You can call up your local buyer, like for your regional office, or you can even call an individual bookstore and see if they can get in a few copies, offer to sign them. I haven't done this myself yet just because I have not been into a bookstore since COVID happened, but it is absolutely on my to-do list. I'm going to be in every bookstore, probably within a 50-mile radius, asking them to order copies. And yes, I will absolutely come sign it when it's time for that. Would you like me to do a signing as well? I will show up and I will have books and I will sign them and we can have an event and that will be lovely. So that's really kind of the benefit of having Ingram as well. Ingram can do ebooks, but again, if you want that higher royalty rate from Amazon for the ebooks, you have to give them the, yes. Okay. So excellent question, Kirsty. So if you're just doing Amazon, you do not need one because Amazon will give you their own. If you are planning on publishing through more than one channel, more than one printer, you need the ISBN because you need them linked together. Because it's the same book. So like if you had like two separate editions, like two separate covers, or there was something different about them, you could have two separate ISBNs for them. But especially for things like sales numbers and things like that, the ISBNs being linked. So for me personally, so if I had given them different ISBNs, if I had let Amazon give my paperback their own ISBN, or the ASIN is what Amazon calls it, and then given the ISBN through Ingram, I would have two paperback listings on Amazon and no one would be able to tell which one was the one that I actually wanted them to buy because it has a higher royalty rate on Amazon. By linking the ISBNs, Amazon will automatically default to their printing for that particular book. So now that I've gone through that, I will go back to the marketing as requested. So for marketing, so in Canada, you get ISBNs for free. That is really good information. So I'm saying that out loud so that you all hear it. For marketing, there is a lot of luck involved in marketing, honestly. So you can personally, I will share this with you guys because I think that it's really important to know. Twitter has been the best marketing for me, honestly. I think that I have sold more copies through just the connections I've made on Twitter, just by honestly interacting with the community than I have through any other method. I've done Amazon ads, I've done Facebook ads, I've done Twitter ads, I've done BookBub ads. I've been featured on All Author. I've been featured on, I don't even remember. There was another site that I paid for a feature on. I spent over $100 on Amazon ads, converted to one sale. And I know this for a fact because Amazon will tell you how many sales come out of it. I don't know exactly how many sales have come out of the others. But at this point, especially with a first book for a self-published author, exposure is the major thing. You want to get your book out there. Amazon has some really nice programs, especially for the ebooks. I'm sure a lot of you saw that I had the other day that I offered Oil and Water for free for a day. You can do, for Amazon, you can do either free or at a discount for up to 5 days in a 90-day period. So that was the last day of my first 90 days. And so I said, okay, well, I'm just going to offer it for free for today. And because I'd already built up my connections, I built up a following on Twitter, I ended up getting over 1,100 downloads in a single day, which is amazing. I mean, as someone who is pouring their heart and soul into this, there is a tiny bit of ooh, I wish I had the royalties on that. But at the same time, first book, this is getting my name out there. And this is the whole point of something like that, of offering it for free. How early did I start promoting? I didn't start promoting until after I'd already hit publish on the book, because one of the other reasons that I published the way that I did and when I did was because I finished the book and I was looking around. I was like, so it's a vampire book, and I was like, dang, vampires are coming back around. Stephanie Meyer's about to put out the new Twilight book, and there's like the Discovery of Witches just came out on the Sundance Channel, and there's that new show on FX, the vampire comedy, and I was like, all right, we got to jump on this. And so I wanted to time it that way. So I put it out there and then I started promoting. And I know that most of you, we have found each other through Twitter because I've interacted with almost all of you who are on this call at this point. There's a couple of you who I don't know if we've actually directly interacted. But that has been the best way to make connections, to find people, to at least get started, because the other thing is the writing community is going to be so supportive. I'm doing this as a video because it's just nice to get everyone in one place, but everyone's always answering questions. For me, I'm always answering questions for other people. And so I think that as far as getting your name out there, start with Twitter. Really, I mean, it sounds silly, but start there, at least for my own experience. So for me, that's going to be kind of the end of my segment. If you have any other questions for me, do me a favor, as you think about them or as you type them, just put my name, colon, and then the question you have, and we'll circle back around to that at the end, because I am going to go ahead and I'm going to pass the recording over to JL Rothstein.
Hi there.
There we go.
Thank you. That was very interesting, and a lot of what you said was the same for me, so I won't have too much difference between the two of us in talking about that. But as far as querying, I had queried very early on a very early draft of the book Atonement, and it wasn't ready. Not that I knew that. I didn't know that. I didn't know much of anything. I am an accountant. That is what I do to put food on the table, and I had never written a book before. And so I went out, I started reading books about writing. I started reading books about publishing. I went out to, there's a site called authorsrepresentation.org, which is sort of lists all of the authors representatives that are out there that are legitimate. And I started looking at what it was that they wanted to know about the book before preparing a pitch. And I probably sent the book out to over 200 agents and authors representatives, and probably received maybe half in rejections, which is probably, that's actually probably pretty good. I think when you're pitching traditionally to traditional agents and publishers, you're probably looking at more like a 25 to 40% rejection rate where you'll actually hear from them. Laura mentioned, someone told her it was 6 months or something like that. From everything I could tell and everything that I had done, it was more like 3 to 6 months at most, but most of them get back to you in like 3 to 6 weeks, because I think for the most part they're seeing so many manuscripts that they kind of get a feel for what they're looking for. And if you do your homework and you're pitching to an agent that is looking for the material that you wrote, I think they're getting through it pretty, relatively quickly, and will let you know. So I went through all that. I went through the whole trauma of rejection, and it is a trauma no matter what anybody tells you. So I went through the whole trauma, and I put it away, and I sort of went back to work, so to speak. And, years later, in 2014, I met my husband, or the man that would be my husband. I told him that I wrote a book, and he was very interested in that. And I finally asked him to read it, and he read it. He said, well, it feels, in the nicest way possible, because my husband is the world's most patient, most nice man. And so in the nicest way possible, he told me that it felt forced together. And in looking back on the process, I had a way of just writing. I was definitely a pantser, if you will. I didn't have an outline. I would go in and I'd be like, I want to write this today, and I would just write it. And then when you had to string the whole story together, it sort of felt forced together, and that's the way it read. So I, in looking back on it now, I realized that it read that way, and that that's what they were reading in that first 10 pages. And so I actually used the book, the first draft, as an outline and rewrote the whole thing. And in between, I had, read a lot of other books. I had read other material. I had done a lot of other things. But I think that experience ended up making me personally feel like, okay, I've been through enough, like I'm ready to put this book out into the world. So, when is it time, like when will you know you've queried enough, or that you shouldn't query or you should query? I think it's a personal answer for every individual author, but like every other person here who's written a book, they're probably wanting to go the traditional method so that they can learn the process of publication. But if you self-publish, it's forced learning. It's on you and only on you. And I would say I would also mimic what Laura said when it comes to, there's nobody to help you. Like, you have to self-promote. You have to go out there and say, my book is great, buy it. You have to be confident in that. You have to get your pitches down. You have to write ad copy. You have to go try a whole bunch of different things and see what works for your genre. I'm in fantasy. My book is about angels and demons and fighting here on earth for the souls of all mankind. That's not a platform for everybody. That you wouldn't advertise that in a magazine for good housekeeping. It wouldn't make any sense for you to advertise it there. So you're learning all those things as you go along, and there's definitely something to be said for that. I've talked to some other authors who are traditionally published who don't do anything. They just write and they sit back, and that's great. And in some days, believe me, I am sitting back here like, that's what I want to do. I want to sit down and just write. But at the same time now, I have a sense of what it takes in what you have to, the time you have to put in, the money you have to put in, the stamina that you have to have. It's not cheap. You're not going to most likely you're not making money on your first book. Mine happens to be like Laura's, mine's a trilogy. So Laura's writing her second book. I'm writing the second book. I shifted at some point in time right after publication at early June to, you know what? I didn't promote early enough. So it's an interesting question where somebody was asking, how early do you start promoting? People in the industry will tell you should have done that 6 months before you were going to launch, that you should be building up those platforms, that you should be talking about the book, that then you should be doing a reveal of the title, that then you should be doing a reveal of the cover, that there's a whole host of things you can do to build excitement for the launch. So I think in that regard, we were late to the game. I was done with the book and I, raised my hands up. Oh, hallelujah. I'm done. Like, whew, it's all, let me put it out there. I'm walking away. That's not an option. You're going to put it out there, and then the work begins in a whole different way. Twitter's been very good, very kind to me. That's where I met everybody here. Instagram's been pretty good for me. Facebook, the ads I think are pretty good. If you're boosting one of your posts that you can see has done pretty well for you. I haven't done straight up ads, but I've done some boosting of the posts, which are relatively inexpensive. But I've tried a little bit of everything. The best advice I can give to other people is to do the same. I think that what works for you is going to be a little different for you than it was necessarily for me, but get yourself in with a community, ask those great questions, and, give as much as you get too. Like, all of us out here are participating in this because we believe we should be paying some level of this forward, and we want to talk about it, and we want to be helpful, and we want to be positive. The more of that you can be, the more you'll get in return. But querying is difficult on its own, and I think you're going to know when you're ready. Like, I think you're going to know when you should give up on that querying, and you should just go and you should self-publish. But it doesn't mean that that's what you're going to do forever. It doesn't mean that at some point in time you won't query again. When somebody just asked that question, it's not like it's a fixed thing, right? Everything changes. In the second book, maybe I'll query it. Maybe I'll go out and I'll look and I'll seek it, or the third, or maybe the next set that I do. Nothing's set in stone. You go out there, you've learned the process, you're appreciative of where you are today and the people that you've met. But you can change that at any time. You can query on the next thing, or maybe I'll write something in a completely different genre. I read a lot of thrillers and suspense that are not fantasy. So maybe I'll write something in what I have a tendency to read a lot of. And maybe I'll go through the traditional method then. I think there's some other people that are going to come up after me that are going to talk a little bit about how there is a hybrid. There are people out there that self-publish certain things and then traditionally publish other things. So it's definitely a big world. Invest the time to get to know it a little bit better. Take risks, go out there, do some advertising, but also reach out, meet some new people, do an author interview with someone. You never know who are going to be your best friends. You know, my first interview was with Paul Lafferty, who wrote the book Down the Lane, which was a biker bar thriller suspense novel that I probably would not have picked up had I not met Paul, but he's been a great supporter of mine. He's been a lot of fun to get to know. So you don't know who you're going to meet out there, and you don't know what that's going to lead you to. So don't close any doors. You know, be open to the experience and enjoy it. You know, enjoy everything that you're going through. Everyone that you're meeting is a piece of this journey that you're on. That would be my strongest piece of advice for people, is just, you never know where it's going to come. You know where you're going to get success. You don't know where those leads are going to come from, and enjoy the moment. So thanks for this, Laura. I'm really appreciative of it. So I don't know who's up next after me.
Well, I'm just going to butt in for 1 second, because there was a question from Emma, and I think that you and I can both probably give similar but maybe slightly different answers. And the question is that we get a lot of reviews. How do we go about getting them? Is it luck? So do you want to answer that one first, and then I'll go next?
Reviews. I mean, it is, I didn't know, and I feel terrible, and I've said this to Laura before, is that I was a pretty decent reader before writing a book and launching it, and I feel terrible because I didn't review any near as much as I really should have. And now I understand as a writer just how valuable they are. I mean, they really are like gold. I mean, you are digging them up everywhere and hoping that you get a good one, and there are no guarantees. I've tried a couple of different things. I would be leery of anyone who's hitting you up for $25 and guaranteeing 4 or 5 5-star reviews. I would be leery of that. But you know, you really do have to go out to the people that, for me, it was almost the opposite. I put it out, and then there were people that came back to me and said, I really enjoyed it. And I was like, well, will you please review? Will you please say that, right? So that there's that, right? There are going to be people that reach out to you, whether they're in your circle, your inner circle, you know, people that know you, that have worked with you, or neighbors or whatever. There's going to be that inner circle that tell you they really enjoyed it. Try to get them to go out there as early as possible and give you reviews. But you can do Circle of Books was one that I did, which also included an author profile. Chicklet Cafe was one that I did. So there's like a whole bunch of like bloggers, book blogger places that you can do a profile / like a vanity review, which is not the same as your readers going out and giving you a review, but those help also. I know Laura's had a couple of those. But you really do have to be dogged about it. You really do have to go out there, and as you're talking to people and they say, yeah, you know, I read it and I really liked it, you know, please give a review, because they really do matter. On Amazon, when you reach 25, you sort of move up a level, and this is 25 in the US. And I know there's some people here on the call that are not all US. Amazon's terrible about clubbing these two things together. If they were treating all of the reviews internationally as one, it'd be different. But they have a tendency to look at these regionally. So, you know, I think I have 5 or 6 or something in the UK that don't count in the US towards the number. They count, and I can see them. They count towards the average, but they don't count towards the levels within Amazon. So Amazon says, okay, at 25 reviews, you get different looks, you move up a level. At 50, it does it again. So there's a whole algorithm that Amazon has behind the scenes that as you're moving up, as your numbers are moving up, it's doing something automatically. Now your book is being viewed by people who are shopping in better spots, in better places. So reviews really, really matter. And I know we talk about it all the time, and we go out there, we ask for them all the time, but you'll see as you're out there and you're writing, you'll see how difficult. You would think it shouldn't be that difficult, but it really is something that you have to keep at, that you have to keep, you know, going out there and asking for.
So, and to piggyback on that, you know, like, so I've done a couple of the profiles, like you mentioned, it's like a promo review sort of package that some of these bloggers will do. Now, the thing is, if you pay a blogger for a review, it is against Amazon's policy for them to leave that review on Amazon. So just please be aware of that ahead of time, because you can get yourself into some pretty deep water with Amazon. Like, they can leave it on Goodreads. But most of these bloggers, if they are, if they're like, you know, integrous, if they have integrity, they will tell, so like the majority of them, they'll say, anything less than 4 or 5 stars, I'll come back to you. I will not publish less than that because, you know, like you're paying me, I'll give you a refund. Like is usually what it comes down to. Like if they can't offer you the review that you would want them to publish, they'll do that. Like they'll never give you a dishonest review. If they're like the ones that you really want to be working with, they'll give you the real review. But they also will usually say like, if I can't promote you the way that our deal was originally set, then I'm going to refund you. But you know, a lot of it, like like I said, I just put out a bunch of free copies of my book. I am really hoping that like 5% of the people who picked up that free copy in the next month or two will go back and leave a review on Amazon, because that's how my book is going to get seen more. That's just how it's going to be. And that's the big thing. I gave a lot of copies, not a lot. I would say I probably gave 15 to 20 copies to friends and family. Like I bought them at cost from Amazon and I said, here you go, Merry Christmas. Like, here's your book, read it, review it, because I need you to, because otherwise you're just like, you're not helping me. I gave you a book, please read it. Be honest. I don't care. Like, you don't have to give me 5 stars if you don't think it's really 5 stars, but please leave the review. And can you ask people to do read for no money, but for a review and still do? Absolutely. Yeah. Here's the thing. If you've paid for a review, that is the only time that it is not permitted. Like, you can send someone a book for free. You can ask, so you can, like, anyone, you can say, hey, please leave a review on Amazon. I mean, I have bookmarks when I sell copies personally, and I'll usually like write on the back of it, like, please leave a review. And like, I have the short links for Amazon, for Goodreads, for BookBub. And so whenever I give my book or when I sell my book personally, that's there. And that's just a little reminder, please leave it. When I drop my book in the free library in town, because I'll drop one like once a month or something, I'll have a little note in the front, like, thank you for supporting a local author. Please help by leaving a review. And those are all completely legit, and buy the book for Amazon because they're still reading the book. You're not giving them money for it. But if you pay someone to promote you and promote your book, at that point, yes, that is not a review that you can use on Amazon. Goodreads, yes. Amazon, no.
There is one other thing I would say too that I have done that has been pretty successful is you can purchase your ebooks. You yourself as the author can purchase ebooks to give away as gifts. So like I bought, I think 20 ebooks, and it's mostly used in the US. I haven't been able to successfully do it outside because Kindle is the US thing. But the ebooks, if you're in the US, you can buy the ebooks. And then when you want to reach out to someone like a blogger or a reviewer, you can say to them, hey, I'm willing to send you a free copy, Kindle version. You send them a link. And when they redeem the book, now that becomes a legitimate purchase to Amazon, which is the other piece, is you want to make sure that's a legitimate purchase to Amazon so that they'll for sure take the review. Now, if that person reviews, it looks like, okay, this was a purchased review, right? As opposed to them trying to crack down on someone that goes on that didn't, tries to leave a review that didn't purchase it. And that's a really inexpensive way for you to get that out there. If you think about it, you're buying 10 or 20 books, it's like $20 if your book is 99 cents or, $25 or whatever, if it's $1.50. So, that's pretty inexpensive for you to do. And people would rather read it that way for a review than to get like a PDF copy or something. For a lot of people, that's an easier way to get your book is through that.
But also, please make sure that you're aware, if you are going to take that route, you can only send ebook copies through Amazon to someone who is in your marketplace. So as someone in the US, I cannot send a Kindle copy to Canada. I cannot send a Kindle copy to the UK. I cannot send a Kindle copy to Australia or Germany or India or Japan or any of those. And I saw another question pop up. Let's see.
Yeah, I think it was about that exact thing. So so we could log into Amazon CA and see Canada, but we can't purchase those free ebook copies to give to people. And the same with the UK.
Yeah. So, and then should ARC reviewers disclose they got a free copy? They can, because I mean, you think about it like, hey, I got a free copy, but this is an honest review. It is, I can market to Canada. Absolutely. I can market to whoever I want to, because my book is available in Canada. But back to the, sorry, I have a little bit of squirrel brain. I see the squirrel. Yeah, so ARC reviewers, it is entirely up to the reviewer if they want to disclose that, because it's not necessary for them to do it. They read the book still. It doesn't matter how they read it. Amazon can be picky if they say that they got it that way. Amazon might not let the review go through it. And the thing is, that's a total crapshoot too. Amazon has very strange sort of arbitrary rules, and depending on who sees the review on their review team, it might go through, it might not. I mean, I have someone who, they're a friend of the family, they read the book. I mean, I haven't seen this person in person in probably 5 years, but they read the book and Amazon wouldn't let it through because they know me. And I'm like, okay. So yes, so that is true. You cannot place a review on Amazon until the release date. Goodreads, I think that there are ways you can do it ahead of time, but it's like a certain amount of time before the actual release date. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch us over because we are moving through this really well. But so please, if you have any more questions for me or for Jen, drop them in the chat and we will circle back around at the end. But I'm going to go ahead and I am going to bring up Jess Hardy now, and she is going to talk about her experience with an independent publisher, how she got there, and what they do for her that maybe we had to do for ourselves as self-publishers. Okay, so.
Hi. That was really, really good information for me, someone who hasn't self-published, so thanks for all of that. So I have written, I think I'm on my 5th book that I'm writing, and I've queried all of them, except for the 5th one because I'm writing it. So that was my process, was always to try to look for an agent first and go that trad route first. The first book I wrote, I shelved. It's still just kind of out there. I think one agent still has the full, that's like 2 years old, so being ghosted on that one. And then the second book I wrote, I felt more connection with that book, and it seemed to get a better response from the beta readers and critique partners that I now have, thanks to Twitter. And so that one did fairly well querying too, but it's a cross genre, so it was a fantasy romance, and just don't know that it was right for trad pub. So that's when I decided to go the indie route. And I'd also written my male romance novella called The Bench at the same time. And so I'd started, I don't know that trad publishing really does novellas. I couldn't find any agents that were interested in that sort of thing. So that's when I started looking at indie presses, and it's hard to find information on indie presses. There are a lot of them out there. It's hard to tell which ones are reputable. Again, I reached out to Twitter and just said, hey, does anyone know any good publishers? And I got a ton of good responses that way. And that's how I found Evernight Publishing for that novella. And they do all electronic. So there's no book. It's just an ebook, which for this was totally fine with me. And they have been fantastic from the get-go. One of the nice things about them is they have their own readers Facebook page that you can hop onto and promote. So they have a lot of loyal readers themselves, just as a publisher. So that's been nice. Their cover artist is phenomenal. So that was really nice too. And I'm a physical therapist in real life, so I'm also a director of rehab, and I work probably 50 hours a week along with writing, so I just don't have time. I don't have the time to do the self-publish stuff, which is really similar to the self-pub stuff. Like the stuff you guys are talking about is what my indie publisher does for me. And you're giving away a fairly big percentage for someone else to do that for you. So the benefits are the cover artists. If you look at the indie press and you like what their covers look like, that can be a huge selling point. The connections, they also send out ARCs to a bunch of blogs, a bunch of bloggers for you before you publish. So that's nice. I don't have to worry about any of that. I still do a fair amount of marketing myself on Twitter, and I use Booksprout for reviews. I really, really like that a lot, but you're not guaranteed a good review. It's not a pay site. It's just a volunteer site. So that was that book with Evernight. And then I have another book that I queried for a long time and got close on that one too. But it didn't happen with traditionally. So I was wondering if I should go shelve that one too, or maybe try indie. But I really love this book. So I went with an indie press and had a really good, that's another thing about indie presses when you've been querying agents for a long time and then you start querying presses and they all really like your book. It's very different market that you're trying to tap into. So it just feels good, like in your heart, just for a little while. But I picked Black Rose Riding there, and they've been great too. I don't feel like I'm very needy as an author. So sometimes it can be a while before I hear from any of them. They've all been like phenomenal at responding to emails that I've sent. But I do wonder sometimes if people need more feedback, if you're not going to get as much as you're looking for from an indie press versus like if it was your own agent. But I don't really know about that. Because like I said, I am totally fine with being like, here's my book. You guys are the experts. I'm going to listen to you and kind of go from there. I've never been asked by either of them to change anything significant or substantial about my book. They've all just kind of, added suggestions on how to bring things out more, or mostly copy edit stuff. So I don't feel like I've lost any control over my book at all with either of them. So overall, it's been like a really positive experience for me just to kind of get a couple books out there and get some readers. And my main goal is still to be traditionally published for now. And so I'm just kind of going that route. I have another book that I've been querying. I'm kind of at the end of querying this one. It's a sci-fi romance. And I've gotten real close on this one too, but not landed an agent yet. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this one. I don't know if I'm going to shelve it or try to do an indie press. Those decisions they're hard to make. And I tend to make them like on the fly after a night of whiskey. So I'm sure that'll happen eventually. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for now. I'm working on a more mainstream contemporary romance now that I'm hoping I'll have more success with, because generally I just try to take two genres and like mash them together with romance, and it's not working for me. So I'm gonna check to see if there's any questions for me. Yeah, just someone said Query Tracker has a good list of publishers, and it does. It just it didn't work for me personally. I just needed, the other thing I did, once I got some offers from some publishers, I went on Twitter and just searched the publisher name and found a bunch of authors who were published by that press. And then I just like friended them, DM'd them and said, hey, what do you think of your publisher? And everybody was super like honest, forthcoming. And I got a lot of really good intel on the publishers that I chose and didn't choose. Just getting that information from people on Twitter. Sorry, there was another question that came through. Did I find a large market for my MM book? I have no idea. So this is another thing that happens with indie press. I will get quarterly reports. I don't know how well the book is doing. I think it's doing okay. People seem to like it. The reviews are okay. But if you need that feedback, like it's rough when you're doing an indie press. It might be different with other presses. I don't know, but I don't have access to that information right now. I'm fine with it personally. It's going to sound so stupid. I just like to write, and I just want the rest of it to take care of itself. Yeah. But that is a thing out there. But I know there's a huge, I read a ton of male romance. So I know there's a lot of people out there that read it. And then linking yourself in with other people that write that sort of stuff is huge too. So I've got a good network of writers who write romance and who write LGBTQ romance and contemporary romance, and just kind of staying hooked up with them. You can all promote each other's work, and that's really great too. So
I'm going to jump in there for 1 minute from the self-publishing aspect. If that is information that you really do want to have, I can literally check that every minute on the minute, every second on the second if I really wanted to. That is information that through Amazon and through Ingram, I have at my fingertips daily. I can see how many copies have sold ebook, how many have shipped print, and how many have been returned. People do return ebooks. I'm just going to tell you that. Like, people return ebooks. Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah, it's a very strange thing. People do return books. I never thought that till I saw the reports. But you can also see how many pages are read. So somebody that's downloaded your ebook, you can see how many pages they read on what days they read them. There's a little creepy factor in there, but you definitely, you're maybe overloaded. I would actually say it's a little tempting to be maybe paying too much attention to that.
I'm very neurotic. I check my email like every 5 minutes. I don't think I could handle that at all.
Yeah. It's not good. It's not good for mental health. I'm just saying, it's really not that good for your mental health.
No, and ours struggles so much as being a writer, so I don't need that extra.
Yeah, so the publisher would have that information, and I'm sure that if you reached out to them and that you could probably get it, but it's a little different because you have to reach out to them and have them get it for you, versus just being able to hit refresh on Chrome.
Over and over and over.
I don't do that. Shh. All right. So Jess, do you have any closing remarks?
No, I'm just keep writing. That's all I can say.
All right. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to pass it off to Britt, who is also, she is being published with an indie publisher as well. And she is going to give us her experience with both getting the publisher and what the publisher is doing for her that maybe Jen and I have had to do for ourselves, maybe what's different than what Jess has experienced.
Right. So let's hope my mic is unmuted properly. It was a little special like that. You'll find out. I do definitely want to touch on like how I went about getting that publisher. And as we've already discussed, I used PitMad. I was fairly new. I think I'm more at the beginning of the process than the other authors here, whether it be self-publishing or otherwise. So that's my experience is definitely different from theirs. So with PitMad, I don't know how many of you are going to be doing that, but I can't say enough good things about it. Even if I would not have gotten picked up, getting yourself out there and having the opportunity for someone to see your idea is a foot in the door. And that's really what you need. But you want to, what I found is it took me, and I think I have more gray hair to this day, was getting the wording right in 280 characters, which if you find out, some things take up more space, but it was getting that conciseness so that so that you can catch attention. And that was my biggest and hardest thing, because you'll find that you can write a whole book, but you can't write 280 characters summarizing what you're trying to pitch. And that was really difficult for me. But I recommend, and I'm not sure what C is going to say, but I recommend, because if you're a first-time author, using that comparison aspect. So I'm not sure if any of you have looked at a tweet and you've seen mine, for instance, is Siren and Discovery of Witches. So your book is completely original and all you, but you're not known yet. So you want to use something that people can cling on to and go, oh, I've watched that, or oh, I've read that. And they immediately align you with, hopefully a positive experience and something that they really want to enjoy. And that definitely worked for me, because I found I got hundreds of retweets that day on that tweet, just from people really liking what I compared it to. Because a lot of people, will use maybe something that they have seen a lot, like Harry Potter, which don't get me wrong, I love me some HP, okay. But definitely I tried to use something that maybe someone hadn't seen but was still familiar with. So that is my aspect of it. And within that day, I had gotten several nibbles from independent presses. I immediately researched them before sending out my information and falling over on the floor, because I was just kind of panicking. Oh my God, I actually got a like from someone, because I just figured I would have to be doing this all over again. This was just a trial run. So to actually be there was really crazy for me. But definitely you need to go in and use Twitter repeatedly. Go in there, search their name. If you see that they have other authors, definitely don't feel bad about asking a question. You know, hey, how do you feel about this publisher? Because you're giving over your creative work and your baby, and you want to know that it's going somewhere where they are going to care about your project. And in my case, that is why I went without an agent and I wanted a small press, because I wanted a little more control. I didn't want someone to come in and say, nope, sorry, none of that. We're just going to basically like rewrite your whole book. And that wasn't for me. So that is also why I chose that route. And when I submitted, like, the process was very easy. She was very relaxed. I went with Fireside Publishing. And that day I said, I asked her in the email, I said, do you want me to get my query letter ready? Do you want my synopsis? Because, you know, I figured she was going to make me jump through all these hoops. And she said, you know what? No, for this event, I don't require that. I'm already interested. Send me your chapters. So you might find that some publishers are very relaxed in that process and aren't, they don't need you to jump through certain hoops. They just are kind of interested and they're ready for the work. So that is where I think everyone's discussed having that polished copy and the best version of your work you can, with getting outsourced editing and what you can do, because these people are going to be reading your book, and while they expect maybe some fine tuning needed, they are going to be critically reading. And if you haven't spent too much time on that process, they might just set it down and go on to the next, because these are people that are getting hundreds of submissions. Even if they're small, they're still getting submissions, and they're liking ideas right and left, because out of the, let's just say, for instance, I know for a fact, one of them liked 500. Out of those 500, 3 got picked. How do they choose? So you definitely need to have that eye-catching thing. One thing that my indie publisher is going to do for me, but I do for myself, is they will take care of the covers, like they said, so that's not something that you have to worry about. They will take care of the editing and the copy editing to make sure those mistakes are out of there. They will also take care of the teasers and doing book reveals for you. However, I like to have a more hands-on thing, and that's something you should discuss with your publisher too, what they're willing to let you do, because I didn't want to just kind of sit here idly while I waited. I wanted to be helpful, and which was great, because Fireside actively recommends that you get on your platform. Like, she shares marketing tips with us all the time. And I saw somewhere earlier, somebody had asked, like, when should you be trying to market your book? And you definitely want to be doing 6 to 12 months beforehand. And it's not even like sending out promotions. And Laura is very good at this. And JL, I've met so many wonderful people. It's building meaningful relationships and connecting with people, because spamming them with promotion will not sell a book, but someone genuinely feeling like they know you. So just sharing maybe a small tidbit. I'm not saying you got to spill your whole day, but a small tidbit about you, an emotionally charged story, or just letting people know what you think or what you're doing. They tend to relate to that and find it funny, and then they want to get to know you. And then you become sort of virtually friends. And then your book becomes something they are excited for. They are, all of a sudden, you are word of mouth. You are being shared. And that's really what translates to sales. Creating this thing. And I feel like I've gotten very good at getting to know people, because I love people. I really do. Even as awkward as I am, I really love kind of cultivating those online relationships, because, you know, some people, you can actually make their day. But I'm not sure if anybody has any questions about PitMed in particular. But if not, I do have some other things that my publisher was able to help me with. As far as, she gave me extra time for having someone read my book. So she provided services where I could get beta readers for free. I highly recommend, and they are selective about what they take. So I'm not sure what all genres they might not read, but Book Truly, they will beta read for free and give you critiques and critical reading as they go. So they will leave, you know, notes in your document about stuff that they find, whether it may be a small edit or just kind of telling you where you should elaborate, or maybe this doesn't read right. And I feel like that was tremendously helpful for me, even though, like, I'm going to be published, but to get that book to the next level. And that was just something that was really exciting to have those people go, this is working well. Let's see. Does anybody else, did you have any questions? I feel like I'm babbling. No? I think we're good. Oh, can you repeat?
Question? Can you repeat the name of the free beta
there it is.
reading?
Oh, Book Truly. You can find them on Twitter. You can find their website. Rachel was the one who read mine in particular, and they're wonderful. They do offer a bunch of other services as well, as does Elizabeth. So we won't, definitely connecting yourself with people that can help you. How many times one time? I only participated one time in PitMad. Laura and I have discussed this. I think it is all about luck. And let me tell you why. So I'm not sure if you remembered, vampires in fantasy are a huge thing right now. And I think I just happened to hit the market right, because while it is paranormal romance and I was a huge Twilight fan, Midnight Sun was just happening to be promoted. The Witcher had been doing well on things, Netflix, The Order, Siren, Discovery of Witches. All these things were coming back and really flooding the market, making it easier for me, like an extra doorway, like here, in you go. And I do think that there was a bit of luck in me, kind of maybe getting my spot there. I like to hope it's a little bit of talent, but maybe more luck, but definitely, timing your book maybe with something that is kind of charging the market does help.
Well, and just to butt in, like you and I have discussed this before as well, because we say it's like, I equate it to acting because I used to do acting. So you can be the most talented person in the world, but if you're not in front of the right director in the right room at the right time, nothing is going to happen. You still have to have the talent, but you need to be in the right room at the right time. And, that's really what happened for you, and that's whenever anyone gets a bite from a publisher or an agent, it's because they had the talent, but it's also because they were in the right room at the right time.
It was. And Fireside they lean towards fantasy and romance. It also helps that my publisher, she's actually a writer herself, and she's published books with other people before she decided to do this. So she's jumped through all these hoops, and she's been critical in assisting me. Like, Jess said, there's not a lot of communication. I would consider myself needy. So I like to be able to go to Blaze and be like, does this look all right? I do like to know that. And it is great to maybe find that publisher that is a little more communicative, because I do like to know these things. Like, how does this sound? Like, does this teaser look good? I happen to need that. Oh, can you see a copy of my pitch? It's actually my pinned tweet. It's just been adjusted to remove the PitMad hashtags, or I think I actually have it, like, I could probably read it to you. So here's how it reads. I did Siren and Discovery of Witches. Beyond the human world lies the unseen. Supernaturals keep the balance between good and evil. With a demon on the rise, headstrong wolf Athena and her brothers fight to save humanity and navigate love, loss, and betrayal. Is it brilliant? I have no idea. Did it take me over a week? Yes. And like I said, the gray hair is still there. But definitely, yeah, you can check my Twitter. It's right there on the top. Like I said, the only thing that's been adjusted is just removing the PitMad hashtags and what genre it was for and things like that. Oh, you're so welcome. Anything else? Yeah. Thank you for the congratulations, Jennifer. I appreciate it. Anything else? Otherwise, I think, oh, you guys are too nice. See, this is why I love the writing community. I don't know if y'all can see that comment, but she's like, I want to read and review it. Thank you. While we have it, reviews, I know that's not my thing, but I've been working on the reviews. I'm not sure. I know some people really get sick of social media, but if I can just touch on that real quick. Connecting with bloggers, YouTubers, book talk, and bookstagrammers. Those people have it. I'm going to throw this word out, even if I'm too old. Those people have a clout that you would not believe. They have followings that are massive. And if you can get one of them an advanced copy, what is book talk? Have you heard? Okay. Do you do TikTok? It's an app. It's a video app. And there's actually a section on it, a whole community. Book talk. Yes. BOOKTOK. Book talk. And there's a whole community of people that all they do is read books they like and promote them non-stop. And this is all for free. This is not, you're not paying them anything. That's just if they happen to like your book, they will absolutely be willing to put that out there for you. So if you can get yourself on Instagram and connect with those communities, that is pivotal to getting yourself reviews, because they review everything they read, good or bad, but they review everything they read. That is their goal, to review an online, like to leave an online, 4 stars, 5 stars, no stars. So that's definitely, if you can cultivate that. And that was something I learned from Blaze as well, my publisher, about the necessity of marketing and putting your book out there. Like, my book isn't released till next year, but I'm working out all kinds of things by joining local and online communities, interacting with people. Like I said, I like to do that. Creating teasers are a huge thing as well. My publisher will do that. I like to do that myself. A good app to do that for free is Adobe Spark. Quick Art will do it. Canva can do it. All of those will let you have free options and photos that you can use of real people or plain type backgrounds. And you can create little tidbits so that people get to know your characters along the way. And that's important as well, because once people kind of fall in love with your characters before they have your book, they're like, huh, that's intriguing. Think I need to read that. All right. I feel like if nobody has any more questions, I feel like I should slide it over to one of these other wonderful gals.
All right, sounds amazing. And because we're going to go from PitMad doing all that, so we're going to switch right over to C. D'Angelo, who is going to be our next speaker.
PitMad.
Gotta unmute yourself, girlfriend.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I agree with everything Britt was saying about PitMad, and really a lot of what both her and Jen were saying about the independent publishers. I'm with an independent publisher. I really can't say much more about that at this time because I haven't been announced yet, but it's been a fabulous experience. I'm thrilled with it. And my book, The Difference, which is my first book, should be coming out this year. I was lucky, as well as Britt, to only query a little bit. I actually, I started my journey in June last year with PitMad, and then I also ended it in September with PitMad. I got interest both times, but the second time, it obviously really worked out. One thing to say about kind of the independent route versus going like the agent route and then publisher is I felt like my friend kind of saved me with this, because I was dead set on, no, I'm going to try for an agent, and I hadn't tried that long. And then when the second PitMad came, I got all kinds of interest, but more of the interest I got was from publishers this time. And so I kind of opened my mind to that. And she had just said, why do you want kind of a middleman? Like, you're going to, nowadays, even when you go with an agent and then publisher, you're going to have to market yourself a lot. I've heard a lot of horror stories from people with the big 5 publishers. So it's not like what you may think it is. And I think that it's great to be open to just going straight to publisher as well. I just kind of want to put that in there. I actually took a webinar with the Women's Fiction Writers Association also a little bit before that PitMad happened, I think. And that also kind of put the bug in my ear of like, oh, okay, I don't really need to go this one route that I always thought would be like the traditional route, because I kind of viewed the independent publisher as a traditional route, because I'm not doing all that extra legwork of like the cover, and I have an editor this way and all that kind of stuff. And it's really nice for my first book to be able to have more guidance, because I don't know what I don't know. I did the best I could. I, had friends beta read it and things like that. And they did a great job, although they're not writers. So, it got me to where I need to be. But anyway, I'm just so grateful for going this route. And so PitMad, okay, so lucky that, the second time I kind of, hit the jackpot with this publisher. And I want to say, First of all, I do, like I said in the intro, I do have an ebook, which is actually, it looks just like this, Party Prosperity. And it's a step-by-step guidebook for when you're doing any pitch party, not just PitMad, because there's a bunch of different pitch parties. And I have the schedule actually on that page of my website that's for writers on my website, and you just scroll down and there's the schedule. But the biggest one is PitMad, and that's for any genre, whereas the other pitch parties, they might be for just fantasy or just Christian books or things like that. So PitMad is, you know, the granddaddy of it. So you want to just definitely know the rules of the party you're doing. Like PitMad, you can tweet 3 times in the day. They suggest spacing them about 4 hours apart. And by the way, it's happening on September 3rd, if you didn't know that. It's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, US. And so there's, you know, certain rules you have to stay in. Of course, it's the 280 characters. And, you know, for all of the parties, it's going to be like that on Twitter. I have seen a few parties on Facebook actually too, just so you know, but most are going to be on Twitter. And to echo what everyone has said, Twitter is amazing for the relationships that it's brought me. I mean, it's brought me my publisher too, but like the friends and the other writers, which I need that support. I need to like, hey, like check in with someone. Hey, am I doing this right? Or what do you think about this? Whatever. So can't say it enough about Twitter. So during PitMad specifically, you want to make sure that, you know, you're really preparing those tweets. And I got to say, the #1 mistake that I see is people are not putting in the stakes in the tweet. I was trying to find mine real quick. I can't find it quick enough, but you want to make sure you have the problem and the stakes in there. So what happens with that problem for that character? Like, that's the whole point of the book. And so if you don't have that, it's really not that strong of a pitch, and maybe you'll get passed up. But another part is really the strategy. And I have a couple pointers for that, but just so you know, on my website, I do have a top 5 pitch party points like flyer that you can download. So that would be very helpful, I think. So you want to definitely make those connections, let people know that you're doing the party, be very active that day. Now, I didn't take the day off of work for that, either of those times, but I definitely popped in a lot, and luckily my job allows that I have time here and there to be able to do that. So you want to like be getting to, you know, other people's accounts and saying, oh, hey, like, will you retweet me? I'll retweet you. Let's retweet each other. I think you want to be like very active. And I actually have made a lot of actual friendships from those days of the 2 PitMad days. And then also now helping other people. It's really interesting to me, like people that like we stay in touch now. So you got to be active. And another great thing to remember is you got to look back the next day and make sure that you've seen all the likes. My publisher liked it after 8 p.m. that day. I checked back a little bit after 8 p.m. that day, but I didn't like, you know, like I didn't look like at 10 o'clock at night or something like that. But the next morning I looked again, and just so happened that she was one of the ones that liked it. So you want to, you know, make sure about that too. So if you need any help with this, just email me. I'll answer whatever I can help you with. And like I said, I have the free pitch party points. I have this ebook guide, step-by-step process, my pitches, how I thought about it, all of that stuff, because I'm such a planner. I love like mapping that all out for you. And then I have evaluation services. And oh yes, my website is cdangeloauthor.com. So CDANGELO author.com.
We can also, I'm sorry, I'm just going to butt in. We can send out an email.
That'd be great. Yeah. And so I also have, like I said, evaluation services. So that's like, you send me your tweets, I'll evaluate them, I'll tell you what I think is good about them, because there's always something good about them, and then what you need to improve on to really get those likes, and then throwing in a little bit of the strategy. But then the coaching is kind of the highest level, and I have coaching and ultimate coaching, and it varies on the amount of time that you want me to spend with you. The ultimate, I'm going to help you with rewrites, and I'm going to sit there and think about like what I think would be a great way for you to convey your ideas. I'm going to list out, okay, these are the points I think you need to make and that you want to make. And don't forget, I haven't read the book, so it's like, you know, just like the people that are looking at your tweet, they haven't read the books, but you got to convey the character, the problem, the stakes in there. And all in 280 characters. But also I agree with comps are a very good idea. If you have the room, put them in there for sure. I don't think it's a huge deal if you don't have them in there, but it definitely helps. I'll say it like that. So any, you know, pitching questions you have, let me know. I also have a lot of testimonials now on my website. And so like people have gotten contracts from my help with them for their tweets. Obviously it was successful for me, and I can't speak highly enough about Twitter and PitMed specifically, you know, like others have said. I think there was a question I just missed. Let me see. If your PitMad tweets get liked, how fast do you need to DM agents? Should you wait till the next day? Oh, okay. So you definitely want to make sure that you want to query them, first of all. So I didn't do any of the legwork as far as like asking people if they liked that publisher or agent or whoever it was ahead of time. I did it when I got like the contract offer. So that's always a good idea. Do that for sure. But what I did was just, I looked within the day if I saw it, or the next day, I really looked and saw like if I liked their website, if I liked their media presence. There's certain lists out there that there's one list in particular, maybe one of the other people can help me out, but it's like a don't use this publisher website. Like we don't want, you know, any association with that one, like a bad list. So I did all that kind of stuff, but you don't have to send to anyone you don't like. There were a few that I never sent to, and because I just knew they weren't right for me. I got a lot of Christian publishers and agents for some reason, even though my story is not a Christian story, it's women's fiction, but it just wasn't like right for me with the way that I want this book to be marketed and everything. So make sure you want to, and then look at their criteria. They're usually going to have a tweet on the PitMad day with their submission criteria. And so that depends for everybody. And then of course, when you go to their website, go by that criteria as well. You want to always make sure that you're putting the tweet they liked in the query letter to them. Most of them are going to want the query letter. Mine wanted the query, the synopsis, and the whole book actually, which I think was to my benefit because I don't think so anymore, but I think it took a little while to get into and be like, oh yeah, I really like this. So luckily she liked it, you know, she had the whole book. So, oh, Writers Beware. Yes, good, Brittany, thank you. Writers Beware. That's the site where, like, if you get a like on PitMad and you're like, oh, I haven't heard of this independent publisher, let me look it up, look on there, make sure they're not on that list. And over this COVID time period, there's been a lot of really horrible stories and publishers going downhill, dismantling, all of that. So anyway, you want to definitely stay up to date on that. But back to the query letter, I must have squirrel brain too. You want to definitely put the tweet at the top and say that they liked it. So you want to be timely about it. You know, I would do it within a few days. They say like PitMad is always going to be on a Thursday, for example. So I would say like by Monday-ish, like you definitely want to send it in. You don't want it to go like super long. Other pitch parties are on different days of the week, but I would do like 3-4 days. That'll give you some time too. Is there one that ranks the good? Oh, I don't know about a list like that, but I do remember seeing some articles that were posted on different platforms, Instagram and Facebook particularly, with top ones. So there might be like a top 10 list, a top 5 list, those kind of like the really great ones, really known ones that have been established for a while. I don't know about more than that or like a specific list though. So yes, email me, find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'll always try to help you out. I love meeting the new people and trying to get you, to where you want to be too. And that's all I have for you, unless there's more questions. Let's see. Various sites that do the top, yeah, exactly what Brittany said. There's various sites that do the top 10, top 20, but some small presses don't accept unagented submissions. Yes, so it just depends on if yours does or not. So I think we'll throw it to...
Then with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pass this over to the lovely Elizabeth Russo, who is going to guide us through kind of the traditional query process, because you have been so amazing with helping me with my query letter, with my submissions. You helped me with my PitMad pitches, and I think that you have a really great service, number one, but also I think that you are someone who could really give a lot of insight onto what that would look like for people, because there's a lot of people who maybe don't necessarily know what a query letter should contain and things like that. But I'm not going to take away from you. So I want you to go ahead and tell us what you want to talk about.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I know we had a few questions on querying, and we've covered kind of the self-publishing to indie press. So I do have your questions here if you submitted them ahead of time, and I'm going to try to get to them. If you have any additional ones, please throw them in there, and I'll try to get them without going too scroll brain, because I suffered the same. First, we'll start with, do you need an agent? And as you've seen from all of the previous authors who have talked, not necessarily. Of course, you can self-publish. Of course, you can go indie. But one of the benefits to getting an agent is, I equate it to having a real estate agent. You can buy property on your own. You can do all the research yourself. But if you really want specific property, or if you have a very specific goal in mind, you're better off linking up with an agent who has those same priorities. So that's why everyone's talking about researching your agents. You want to make sure you really find someone you're going to click with. And it may not be who you expect, but you don't need an agent. If that's something you want, though, it's totally fine to pursue. And you're going to have to pursue it pretty hard. And it's a lot of work. I've worked with authors who have done the whole gamut. But querying is definitely a difficult process. So I want to get to the common pitfalls of querying, because I know that came up. Like I mentioned, I think one of the biggest things I see, because what you can do on Twitter is follow agents that you're interested in, and that is hugely useful. You can see, I recommend hashtag MSWL, the manuscript wish list. So that's how you find out what an agent is specifically looking for. They'll tell you the genre. Sometimes there's a separate website and they'll tell you, oh, I like these books. And you can see if your book is similar. Those are great resources to be able to hook that agent when you write your query. So if you've researched the agent, you start off your query with that hook. Like, hey, I saw that you liked this book. I have a book that covers that same topic, and I think you might be interested. And that's how you hook that agent, because they know you've researched them. Then in the following paragraph, it's usually 3 paragraphs, you'll have, like C. D'Angelo said, the stakes. You got to tell them who the character is. It's like the pitch, but you get a little more room. So you tell them who the character is, what they're going to fight, what struggle they're going to have, what are the stakes, what will they lose if this all falls apart. And that's what gets people really into your story. So once you've established that and you leave them with kind of that gripping moment, you can either write, if you have a background in a specific subject you're talking about, that's great to include, but you don't have to create that 3rd paragraph. You don't have to put something in there if you're a new author. You can just keep it very simple and professional. I think a lot of people worry about, you know, I have to tell them everything about me so they understand who I am. If it's not relevant to the book, in general, they're professionals. They'll understand that you're a new author. I think, as everyone said, the writing community is extremely welcoming, and there's no shame in being new. And in fact, you'll find that people are very happy to reach out to a new author and bring you along with them. So don't even worry about that. I would say the difficulty with querying is you're exposing yourself, right? You're asking someone to read your work. And for some people, that first time is terrifying. What I really suggest is have someone read over your query. Yes, MSWL, thank you. If you're very worried about it, and even if you're not, have someone else look over it. Make sure that they understand what your book is about. Because if your friend or a writing friend can't quite grasp an agent, you just don't want to give them any reason to say no. So my biggest recommendation is always get a second pair of eyes on what you're submitting. It doesn't have to be perfect. You hear horror stories of agents saying, well, they spelled my name wrong. Well, there's always going to be some of that. But most agents are willing to forgive if they're interested, and they really want to find new authors. So go from that someone wants to find you, help them. Let me go to an effective query letter. I know someone, I'm not sure who it was, but someone had asked, how do you write an effective query letter for multiple characters? And I think, I imagine C. D'Angelo would probably agree with this, is focus on the problem and the stakes. And maybe if there's some unifying aspect of that group, like if it's a small town that has to take on an issue or something that kind of brings them together, that's something good to highlight because it builds up that team aspect. So, and if I haven't answered that enough, please throw a question in the chat because I can address it further, but you don't have to focus on the characters, but it's good to highlight maybe like one main character, or you can say it's like multiple POVs, but then just talk about what the problem actually is. So now we get to the difficult part, when to stop querying. So you have heard a lot of different experiences with querying, and if you're on Twitter, which it sounds like most of you are, you will have seen lots of horror stories. So the first advice I can give you is, in general, until you're agented or until you are past the process, I wouldn't be too forthcoming with rejections. Sometimes people are looking for commiseration. That's not something you want to necessarily put out publicly. Your writer friends will be there for you for sure, but it's a professionalism thing, because the agents, if they're going to research you, you may not want that blasted out on your Twitter and, oh, she's already had so many rejections. It's just one of those things. You don't want to give them any reason to say no. So I say hold your cards close to your chest, and don't let anyone know. It is a struggle, and that's why you have writer friends, and reach out to any of us, because we've, I'm sure, all been there. But when do you know when to stop querying? As you've seen from the previous panelists, it's a personal decision. But one thing I will say is, from different authors I've worked with, they've had a lot of success working in batches. So say you have like 100 agents that you are interested in. I see the question and I'll get right to it. If you have 100 agents you're interested in, you want to query them in batches of 10 or 20 at a time. And wait until you get some feedback. In general, a lot of agents will be really upfront with, hey, I respond within 3 months, and if I haven't, you can nudge me, and that's perfectly okay. They're very busy, and they may need that nudge. But it's, sorry, when you're trying to go through this process, you're gonna get feedback, and some of it's gonna sting. However, sometimes you'll get an agent who will give you constructive feedback. They're not required to, some don't have time to, and that's not their fault. But when you get a good one that gives you specific something like the character I don't feel had enough of an arc, or the setting was a bit ambiguous, or I didn't have a good understanding of the time or pacing, that gives you something to work with. So instead of going on to query all the rest of the authors, you have a chance to go back and revise and take a look at what you've got and see if there's any merit to it. It is a subjective process, so not every bit of feedback you get is going to apply. And if you take everyone's feedback, who knows what your manuscript could look like by the time you're done. But when you start seeing trends and you get a few different agents saying, hey, I'm stumbling over this, or I just wasn't caught up in your first pages and I wanted to be. Okay, that tells you where you need to focus. And I would highly recommend at that point, go back and do revisions or talk to someone who is good at critique. Beta readers are good, but they're not necessarily trained or have the background to be able to provide you the input you might need. But if you don't have anybody else, reach out to someone in the writing community. Just ask, hey, can you take a look at this and tell me maybe what's not working? I think from all the authors I've worked with who have had success in finding agents, that's worked the best for them. They have tons of rejections, but it's because they went in batches, they revised, and then batches, revise, until they kind of get to where they need to be. It's difficult, and I know that it can get very frustrating. And for not everybody is going to want that kind of process, or maybe they're going to decide, you know what, this is just too much for me. Perfectly okay. But don't get discouraged if you get pretty far down the line and you're thinking, man, I've had 30 agents say no. Is that so bad? I'm not sure. If you do some research out there, there are lots of people who have had many agents who have turned them down. It's all about volume, and like Britt was saying, it's luck. A lot of it is luck. You got to find the right person at the right time. So put yourself out there. Okay, so I touched a little bit on beta readers, and I know Jess mentioned beta readers and critique partners. So I wanted to just real quick, if you guys are interested even in self-publishing or traditional, I highly recommend having, if you can, a combination of both. What I recommend is beta readers for the macro of how the book works as a whole. And those can be just readers, and they don't need to have writing experience. They can just read your genre and say, hey, I loved it, or the pace was a little slow here. And I asked them to put like an X where maybe they put the book down, or if they struggle, that way you know where your pacing is struggling. The beta readers can't always give you the feedback you need. You will benefit a lot from having critique partners as well, because they'll give you the micro level information on what in that scene isn't working, or they'll understand, hopefully, if they're writer friends and they have done some research in the craft, they can tell you what's not working. That's why I think having both, like Jess does, is actually a great way to go, because they'll give you the best of both worlds. So let me look real quick. There was a question. So when querying, and you know you are writing a series, do you query this series or just the current book? Okay. You query the first book, and you can put in that this is a first of a series of 3, first of a trilogy, but you only query that one book because that's what the agent is going to sell to a publisher. So start with just that one book. I hope that answers that. And there's another question. Okay, worrying about querying an agent who is perhaps not into your genre or style of writing. So when I mentioned earlier the manuscript wish list, this is a fantastic way to find out if it's a genre they're interested in. Some of them will straight up say, please don't send me anything this. You know, there are agents who say, I can't stand sci-fi. It's just their personal preference, or I can't sell this. And they'll be very honest. You use that to your advantage. So if you're worried about your specific genre, that will probably be your best resource. You'll find people who are asking for it, and then you won't waste your time querying off agents who aren't going to be interested. Maybe save yourself a couple painful rejections or ghosting, which happens a lot. So I hope that answered the question. And let me move on very quickly to, so one of the, I'm going to cover editing just a little bit because we talked a little bit with self-publishing, you have to do all that yourself. And in indie, Britt mentioned that she got a copy editor and they provide all that for her. If you are choosing to do self-publishing, I cannot recommend enough having a good editor. Unfortunately, not all editors are created equal. Your friend may have been very good in English, but they may not be up to date on the industry standard, like the Chicago Manual of Style. And they're going to fix the minor stuff, but they're not going to have that extra finesse that will have an agent or someone reading your self-published book saying, oh, this author knows what they're talking about. If you want to compete with traditionally published books, you got to bring yourself to that level. And on Twitter, I have seen a lot of people concerned about the price of editing. It can vary a lot. And I tell you, in most cases, you do get what you pay for. But if you're on a budget and you find a really good editor, talk to them, see what they can do, see if they can recommend somebody else who's maybe more in your budget. Because the truth is, you need at least someone to go through and help clean it up for you. Because I will admit, even before I was doing editing, I was one of those people who, if I saw a book and the grammar was all off, or I couldn't follow the dialogue because I had no idea who was speaking, I put it down. And I hated to not finish novels, but I would put it down because I didn't trust that author. And for me, that was a very personal experience. But I know a lot of readers are that way. They're like, oh, the author doesn't know. And you just don't want to have someone put your book down for something as simple as that. So again, I reiterate, if you're going to compete with a traditionally published book in the marketplace, if your goal is not just to, because this is perfectly fine to put your book out and say, I just want it published. I just want people to read the story. But if you want to go after it and you want to be the top and you want to get there, you're probably going to need to put in some time and some effort into getting a good editor. One thing you can do is you can check the ACES, Society for Editors. You can check the Editorial Freelance Association. These are, I'm a member of both. They're fantastic organizations with very experienced editors. And they are a wide range, fiction, nonfiction, everything. But you can look people up on there. They may have formal degrees, certificates. You want someone who knows what they're doing, because I unfortunately have seen instances where I'm looking at a book and they said I did have an editor look at it, and I know that they probably paid someone far too much for what they got, and I do not want that to happen to anybody. It's sad. So I really do recommend do your homework. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you think there's a certain type of editor and you're not sure how to find them, I'm happy to help you try to find someone, because it's genre specific, you know, not every editor does every genre. I see there's other questions. Okay, so different types of editors, copy versus content, yes. Back to an editor who isn't the same genre. Okay, so I purposely have slang from a particular character. How do you find the right editor match? So I see the other questions. Yes, thank you, Laura. I will say them again, but we'll give them out in an email. Okay, so just like finding a good match for your agent, you want to find a good editor. I will tell you a good editor will probably do a few sample pages and they'll read it over and they'll let you know. And before you pay them the full amount, they'll probably go through and you can send them sample pages with that slang that you're concerned about and see how they treat it. And you should talk to your editor ahead of time. Not everyone has the same approach, but I'm very hands-on. I want to know, what's your story? Why did you write it? Tell me as much as you can so that I can try to capture your voice if I make any corrections. And that way I know what you're going for. So if there's slang in there and you were to tell me like, hey, you know, there's this particular way of talking because they live, you know, inner city here, or they're in the South, so that's what they're going to say. They should respect that and they should keep it in there. They might even find creative ways for you to express that in ways that are easier for the reader to read. For example, foreign words or foreign accents, if they're overdone in dialogue, it can be really hard to read. I'm sure everyone's had a moment where you're reading through a book and you're kind of stumbling over the pronunciation. Sometimes it goes a little too far. So there are ways to be able to hint at that accent and still make it readable. A good editor should be able to work with you, but I wouldn't hire someone straight up until you've talked to them quite a bit. In fact, I love the idea of video calls because you can talk to the person and really get a feel for who they are as an author and if you're the right fit. And if you're not, most people will try to recommend you to someone who might be a little better. So let me go through, there's just a couple of questions. So the organizations, ACES, ACES, Society for Editing, or Society for Editors, sorry, and EFA, Editors Freelance Association. So EFA.org will give you generic rates. So when you go to their rates, you just Google EFA.org rates, that there you can see kind of basic rates. Now these are not everybody's and it's not all experience levels, but you can kind of get an idea of maybe what ballpark you will be paying for edits. Again, if you have a certain budget, still talk to that editor and see what they can do. Let's see, can you mention editing things a lot of, let's see. Editing things a lot of authors may not be fully familiar with, like talking head syndrome, drowning in dialogue. Editors often catch and beta readers might not catch it, or an inexperienced editor might overlook it as well. Oh goodness, yeah, talking head syndrome. So without going too far, because I promise I can talk about this all day and I'm so sorry. But so talking head syndrome is when the reader isn't sure who's talking. There's dialogue, but the attribution, like Max said, isn't directly linked to that dialogue. And sometimes, if it gets really bad, it goes back and forth and you can't follow who's saying what. So dialogue tags and action beats will help your reader along, and then they won't have to worry about who's talking. Another way to fight that, because I know everyone's probably had that moment where you're reading a book and you're like, wait, who's saying this? Who's talking right now? It can be very confusing. And the one thing you never want to do is have your reader stop reading to try to figure something out. You want them to just give in to your book completely. So those little dialogue tags, saying he said, she said, they said, super simple. And the reader doesn't even notice it, but they register what's happening. So that can be really difficult, and an editor will, for you, it may make sense. An editor will help you figure out how to guide the reader through that. Sometimes you may need to punch up what one character sounds like. Each character should have their own voice, and maybe you need to kind of emphasize that more on one so that the reader doesn't get confused. Drowning in dialogue. I actually read a book recently that is a good example of this. It actually had tons of dialogue, interesting dialogue, but I didn't know where I was. And as a reader, it's fun up till a certain point, but if you don't have situational awareness, if you don't understand where this conversation is taking place, it can get a little confusing. And I actually had to go back and read it, which again, brings me out of the story, brings your reader out of the story. So sprinkling in, I like to recommend sprinkling in 5 senses, because if you can feel something, if you can smell it, if you can taste it, those give readers an idea of what's happening, and it really helps them be present in your story. Let's see. So these are all little things, and just to specify, so a copy editor does various levels of copy editing, and they call it editing. It's kind of difficult because there's not a direct definition of all of this, but in general, there's copy editing. They'll do sometimes called proofreading. They'll make sure all your mechanics are correct. Then there's the extra level of content, line, developmental, digging in deeper. And the talking head syndrome, drowning in dialogue, starts to veer into a little heavier treatment of editing. And that's where you talk to your editor about, you know, how much of that you need. Like, hey, I can only afford X, but can you help me prioritize what I need? And they'll usually be pretty good about that. And quite honestly, if I spot something, I'll just say, hey, I'm not quite sure who's saying this. It's not that complicated to just let somebody know that. But do understand that when an editor takes on your project, they're going to give it hours and hours of time to try to polish it as much as they can within the price that you're able to pay. And, you know, they're going to try. They really are. And some really good ones will find a lot more than you would expect. And each editor will have a different line for where hey, I just correct the mechanical problems. Or some are specialists in grammar. So if you see someone on their website, you know, they're really into grammar and you know that that's your weakness, perfect pairing, right? So it goes back to talk to your editor when you first start working with them, and you don't have to sign a contract with them or pay with them until you're comfortable with them. But once you do, talk to them. Most of the people I've worked with who are editors, they just love books and reading. And like for me, this is today exactly why I do this. I love helping writers get over that hump and make that good first impression. And when I hear someone succeeding, it makes my day. So let's see, do I have any other questions? Yes, so Britt says I have to have both styles of editing done before release. And that is a very good point. In most cases, you are going to have someone who reads it for content and someone who cleans it up afterward. They're two completely different things. It can be very difficult for an editor to do both, and I'll tell you why. Even if you're very good at English, and for an author, you may be really good at writing, but it's almost impossible to edit your own work. And even editors, we hire other editors, because if we need something to be spot on, we're just not going to see it. I will have a typo that I'll read over 6 times because I typed it. It's much easier to spot that stuff in somebody else's work. So yes, in some cases, a copy editor may get your piece and ask you, have you worked with a developmental editor on this? And they may recommend, hey, before you have me do this, it might be worth talking to somebody to go into the depth and the story structure and get all of that perfected and tightened before you go through the polishing process, because we don't want you to waste your time and money. It's just not worth it. Thanks, Brett. Yes. So as you can see, I hope I haven't taken up too much time. I can talk about this all day long. I love it. But if you guys don't have any other questions, let's see. Oh, okay. That's a really good question. What is the value of editing, such as pro writing aid? So there are a lot of different editing programs out there that can help clean up your copy. Some are better than others. And from what I heard, I have not used pro writing aid, so I can't give a full piece of feedback on this. But in general, they're good at capturing the basic level stuff. But when you're starting to edit for context and nuance, sometimes you really need a human to be able to see that. I'm trying to think of an example, and I will just throw out there, I work with a lot of authors who use pen names, so I try to be very conscientious and keep that if they do not want that out. So when I think of examples, I try to make sure I respect that. I would say one really good example of that is when you're writing things that are very nuanced, and it changes that context, you need to be very keyed in on what it's changing. I would say it can probably catch quite a bit, and you might save yourself some time and money if you run it through that first. And if you're happy with that, then someone can just do a quick pass through it. And if it's very clean, it may not take an editor very long. But I mean, So Lily says, I use it and it helps me. That's awesome. So honestly, I'm for anything that cleans up your writing and gets you to that next level. Use it. I just don't want, since I haven't used it myself, I can't give like a full, I don't know how good it is at catching everything. It's actually on my list of things to do. I want to try a couple of the different recommendations out there for editing software to see at what point someone would need to step in. So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of information on that right now, but it's a really good thing to bring up. And thank you, Lily, for using your experience. So
if you don't mind, I could step in just because you've also gone over my manuscript, but before I sent it to you, I did use Grammarly, which is one of those apps. Well, and here's the thing. It was great. It caught a lot of things that I didn't. Yes. It has absolutely tried. What Britt is saying right now that it has changed some of the things. There are times where it thinks that there's a comma needed and it really isn't. It is, it's helpful, but it is really time consuming going through and making sure that it's still, accurate, because it's taking its best clues. And as you said, it's not a person. And there were things that even you found that were not correct, like for example, and as someone who is a layperson in this, when I, first novel, I did not realize, like when you're typing it out, that there is not a technical difference between a hyphen being used and an em dash. And I'm sure you remember when you fixed all of mine. But so like that, things like that. Grammarly will not catch that, but someone like Elizabeth can absolutely catch that for you and make sure that what you're sending out to publishers or what you're putting in front of readers is what it should be.
Yes, and to that point, actually, thank you for bringing that up, because Grammarly is very good for the basic English cleanup, but the publishing industry has kind of a specific style that it sticks to with the Chicago Manual, and so Grammarly can catch a lot of that, but it's not going to know when to make that decision that it should be one thing over another. And what I like to tell people is, again, you want to give your agents that you're querying as little reason to say no as possible. Don't let them say no. So if your copy is very clean and they read through the first few pages and they're not tripped up by like, oh, I wouldn't have, oh, they put that, oh, they're not going to say no because of that. But I just firmly believe, like, don't even give them that chance. So this is just one way to make sure you're hitting all of the industry standards that you need to and have it at that professional level that's expected. And then there's yes, the em dash, it is so complicated sometimes, and people will put spaces before and after, and yeah, it's little stuff like that will trip people up. And like I said, it's not going to be the reason an agent says no, but it's just another thing to show that you are a professional in this industry and show that you know what you're talking about. And if you've had a good editor, an agent will probably notice that. Any other questions? You had humans, look after your book. Yep, you need to.
Yeah, not to jump in here, but I just wanted to speak really quick about my own personal process, because I actually hired an editor, and as a self-published author, it's very different, right? It's a very different experience as opposed to going through an agent or a publishing company that actually has one or finds one for you. So I knew I needed one. I didn't know very much about editing. I knew there was a lot of different services available. So do your homework. Understand that there's a difference between looking over your story from a plot structure or a point of view issue, which is what they were alluding to earlier when they were talking about head hopping, which if we think of point of view, authors sort of take it for granted. But as a reader, if we think of point of view as a camera lens, that's the person looking through the camera lens at the action that's happening. When you pass that camera over to the next person, if the reader doesn't understand that that's what you've done, that the person looking at what's in front of them or is happening or is speaking has changed, then you've failed the reader, right? Now they're confused. Whose head am I in? Who's experiencing this moment? Who's looking at this moment? Who's speaking? It can happen even outside of dialogue. So things of that nature, things of plot problems, like you started here and you ended here and you didn't connect those dots. Getting down to that level is a completely different editing service than someone looking for your misspellings, your grammar, your em dashes, your hard returns. You know, everyone's been widows and orphans inside Word has been the plague of many an author. Those are two different worlds, and there's many editing services in between there. But from my own personal experience, I used Reedsy, which is a Canadian company that has a lot of free services for authors. But one of the things that I really liked about it is twofold. One is you can go out there and see, they really detail list all the different editing services that are available for their editors that are out there. The reviews are out there. You can go look at the reviews. They rate from 1 to 5 stars. You can reach out and talk to the editor ahead of time. If you do, you can see what they've edited in the past. You can go look at previous people. You can reach out to those people and say, you went to this editor and had this service. What was your experience like? Did you like it? So you actually have referrals that are built within the site. And one of the better pieces to give comfort level, because you are spending thousands of dollars for a good editor. And, you know, E is right, Elizabeth is right, you're going to get what you pay for. So if you're going to try to cheap out on this, I would say don't even bother, because you're going to get what you pay for in this area. So once you're giving thousands of dollars, it's like, oh, I hope this person does this and I hope they do it on time. And you can talk to them, you can do your research. But one of the things I liked about Reedsy is if ever there was a conflict, Reedsy will actually step in and do the arbitration for you. So you as the person purchasing a service of that level of expense can actually step back and be like, okay, at least there's somebody in my corner to make sure that this person will actually return a phone call or return an email. And you can see every part of the process. So when you give them the file, you can see that they've received it. When they give it back to you, you can see that you got it. It tracks all the changes. You can have those conversations up front. I couldn't have been happier with it. I know people have had other services, and obviously you can do your own work by looking up ACEs and looking up some of these other things. But you do need to understand, what are you buying? It's when I talk to people about editing, I hate when they say, well, I got all my own commas. This is so much more. The self-publishing industry in particular, I think, and I actually wrote a blog post about this, I think there's some sort of weird badge of courage that you didn't edit your work, or that you didn't have your work edited. You should have your work edited. It doesn't necessarily, depending on how far along you are and how many books you've published and how much of the process you've gone through, perhaps you're good enough to get away with beta readers, or you're good enough to get a friend to do it, or you're able to get the librarian to read it or something, and you'd be covered. But there's so much to this process that you can learn as an author. This is not just about someone fixing your grammar. Don't undervalue this piece of the process, not just because you hope one day that you can query and be professionally published. You have that aspect of it, and you want to come across as professional. You should look at this professionally. It should be polished. You should go into this like it's a business deal. You're asking somebody to invest in your work. So have that hat on and that mentality on when you're doing it, but don't undervalue this. There's a lot of places you can save money when you're out there and you're self-publishing. I would highly recommend it not be in editing. And if it's your first time and you don't know what you're looking for, you should have somebody looking at it developmentally, the whole thing, the whole big picture thing. If they're good at what they do, they'll come back and tell you, this is what you need, even if it's from the sample. So part of the process in Reedsy is I had to send her the first 3 chapters so that she would get a sense whether or not that was something, one, she wanted to do, but 2, that she's done in the past. And she gauged my level by that 3 chapters. She looked at the first 3 chapters and said, this is where you are and this is what you need. Those are all really valuable things for you to know as an author, but I can't say it enough. You need to do your homework, and you need to invest some money here if you want to be professional in going out into this world, especially if you're going to have plans to query and go out to an agent and go out to a publisher. Because I think everybody in this call has read a book, particularly in self-publishing, where you thought, oh my goodness, this is bad. This is really bad. I don't even know if I can get through this. We've all had that experience. You don't want it to be you. You don't want that to happen to you. And like she said, you don't want to give anybody a reason to say no when you're in this process, but you're going to learn just as much. It's not just the value of having your work polished. You're going to learn along the way. You're going to learn what not to do next time. This stuff is, it's like going to class, right? You don't forget it. You take it with you onto the next one. And the whole idea as authors, and I think I can speak for everybody on the call, you do your best on your first book, but you know your second book is going to be better. You know the third book's going to be better than the second, because you know you're learning as you do this process. You're going to get something out of that editing process as well. So don't undervalue that.
I did have one thing to add to that, which kind of goes with the traditional, or not traditional, but the indie publishing, the hand holding there is there for the editing. She shared with me something that was brilliant, that a lot of people don't think about. So you know your book front to back, you get your characters, you know what they're going to do, you know where the plot is going to go. Your readers don't. And she told me, do not, like when you're writing dialogue, when you're writing a scene, she goes, do not expect your reader to know, because they don't. So if you're dependent upon, oh, well, 3 more chapters, you know, they'll really start to like my book, they might not get that far. So, and that's where that editing, all that extra bulk maybe comes in handy, because you've said it so many times, you don't want to give anybody a reason to pass on your book, pass on your query, or put your book down. Like you've got, especially if they have it in their hand, like you're that far, you don't want them, you know, to just toss it off to the side and then go, yeah, give a review and it was terrible. So, and I think that's where my publisher has been great in that aspect of being very honest with me about the editing process, and being very honest with me about, this is good, I like the idea, I love what you're doing, but you need to be better, and this is what you need to fix, when she's giving me specific critiques for that, and they've been very useful. Word count, oh, that's a great question. Word count is completely different based on genre. I found this out because I have a friend who's querying. She's doing romantic, like comedy, contemporary romance, and they want her book to be like a max of 80 to 100,000 characters, whereas I'm fantasy and paranormal, I can be above that. And I went, so her book is sitting right now at 120K, and the agent literally said you need to cut 40,000 words. And she's trying to do it without an editor, and that just becomes a whole, you know, it's very difficult. But yeah, each genre is a little bit different. So I didn't worry about word count because I knew I was writing a bit fantasy and paranormal. I'm not sure about some of the other authors.
I can add to that too. You know, rookie mistake. I thought after my first few drafts, I was like, okay, I got it. Yay, I'm done. And it was at like 60,000. And for women's fiction, it needs to be more in that 90-ish thousand range. And I was like, gosh, how do I get this up to that? And so somehow I got it to at least like 83, I think it was, when I turned it in for the final rounds. And that's fine that it still wasn't like what it should be, because they know when you're going to work back and forth with them that it's going to be that. And now it's over that. Now it's like 95 or 96 or something like that. So don't worry too much about it. Be like within a range of it for your genre, but don't not query because it's not the exact amount that you've read that it should be. I hope that helps.
And also I would just say, Laura, I would just, before you jump in, I was also going to say account for editing there, right? See, like when in Elizabeth, like you want to make sure you're not at the absolute max, because if you do have it edited, it doesn't leave you a lot of room to write more. So if you come kind of in the middle, right? So if your genre is 80 to 120,000, you know, account for the fact there's going to be cutting and then adding after you go through that editing process.
I would add to that, if you let your editor know that you're tight on word count, or you have a specific word count and you're concerned about that, as they go through, they can keep an eye out for things that they could say, hey, actually this could be cut or something. Not every editor does that, so I will warn you, but like that's something I would do. If you let me know that you're like 3,000 on your word count and your agent or publisher said absolutely 3,000 too many, I would help you try to find places that we can cut. It's painful, but I definitely can do that.
So then as far as that goes too, this is another place where the manuscript wish list can come in really handy, because there are some agents and there are some publishers who say, I don't care if it's paranormal, I don't care if it's sci-fi. And Kirsty, some of the reason for that is actually, so like If it takes place in the real world or things like that, like contemporary, you don't need world building. So you don't need as many words. Sci-fi, fantasy, things like that, there has to be a certain amount of world building to bring people into what is different from our world. And that would be a reason for different word counts. But there are some publishers and agents out there who'll be like, I don't care if it's a paranormal fantasy. I don't want more than 80,000 words. And so please don't send me, like, my book is 127,000 words. I'm not going to send that to them because I'm not even in the realm. But we are nearing the end of the time. So if anyone has any questions left, please put them in the chat now. I am going to, you're very welcome. I am going to put out, as I mentioned in chat a couple times, I'm going to put out every resource, every website, the hashtags that you should maybe search, like to get an idea for things. All of that will go in an email. You'll get all of our Twitter handles, all of our websites individually if we have them, just so that you can kind of see us and see what we've done. Let's see, reader expectations. Exactly. So someone expecting, precisely, someone who just wants to read like a quick rom-com, they're not going to want to read 200,000 word 700 page epic. They should an author have a website? I'm going to say yes. It does not have to be anything major. It can be something basic, but it has to have you. It has to have kind of like what, if you're not published, don't put like your book up there or anything like that, but you just need to have a website about you, kind of like who you are, what you like to write. If you have a blog, it does not hurt to have a blog, maybe review a couple books, things like that, just to show that like you're interested in the industry, things like that. They're all things that are going to help you be seen by these publishers, by these agents. And most of them will ask for it, to be honest. Anyone else? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start wrapping up this call. I'm so happy that you all joined us today. I am so thankful to all of our panelists who came on and they spoke, because I think that even I know all of these women, and I still got some great information, like things that I didn't necessarily know before. So even as the person who put it together, I'm very excited about the information I have. I took like 2 whole pages of notes, both things that I'm going to send out to you all and things that for my own self. So I hope that you all got something out of it. And yes, so look for a follow-up email. I'll probably send it out, if not today, certainly tomorrow. And yeah, just thank you. I'm going to cut the recording now.